This is Lyric, and she's unconscious because at this part they had to put her in this little bubble thing because she was extremely cold.
A31169 Christopher Wren versus AffinityLifestyles.com Inc.
Yeah, some stipulated exhibits.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, we do.
Okay.
It's going to be exhibit 575, 585, 793, 794, 795, and then 795A, 597. Make sure I'm not missing one. I believe that's it, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor, we agree.
Okay, so 575, 585, 793, 794, 795A, and 597 are admitted. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Please rise for the jury. Please be seated.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Thank you for your service, for your patience. The plan is ready to proceed. Okay.
Plaintiffs call Sante Williams this thing.
Okay.
This way. Right this way. You would remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk, and sworn.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please be seated. State and spell your first and last name for the record.
Hi, I'm Sante Williams, SanteWilliams.
And good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sante.
Good morning.
Let's introduce you a little bit to the jury. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Los Angeles. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and moved to Los Angeles when I was about 3 years old.
And so you went to high school there?
Yes.
And what brought you to Las Vegas?
My parents moved here a few years before I did while I was still in college. After I left college, I had to move back in with my parents, so I moved here from Los Angeles in 2008. The plan was to be here for a year, but I've been here 16 years now.
And what do you do for work?
I work at Amazon and I drive Lyft.
And I know you're a busy single mom, but what are some of the things that you enjoy doing?
I have art background and dancing and filmmaking, so that's pretty much are my hobbies now. Dancing, hiking, well, mostly dancing with the girls now, and occasionally teach dance whenever there's availability.
And so you have twin girls, right?
Yes,
London and Lyric.
yes.
How did you come up with their names?
Well, I love music, so obviously that's where Lyric came from. And I spell her name with a Q at the end instead of a C to just kind of give it a unique twist on it. And London came from, I planned to make a trip with my friends to go to Europe in 2020, and we planned it in 2019. But later that year, I found out I was pregnant with the twins and I was due at that time. So we ended up not going to Europe for one, because of COVID and because I was pregnant. So since it wasn't in the cards for me to go there, I figure well, London specifically. I named my daughter after London. That was supposed to be my first time out of the country and excited about it, but due to COVID and pregnancy, that didn't take place. So
So you dedicated that to your
I dedicated that trip to my daughter.
And so and who was born first out of the two of them?
Lyric, they're about under a minute apart, about 48 seconds.
And let's transition to why we're here. When did you start first drinking well water?
I first started drinking well water in 2019. I was buying the independent bottles out of like gas stations and stores, and it was a consistent thing from there.
And eventually you switched to the home delivery. Why did you switch to the home delivery?
The home delivery came about at the end of my pregnancy during the shutdown. It was at a time when it was during the water and toilet paper frenzy, so I decided to just get home delivery to make it easier for myself, because I was getting groceries delivered as well. And that's pretty much how that came about.
And how are you using well water on a daily basis and with the girls?
Rather through the water bottles or the home delivery I was receiving.
And how are you drinking it or using it?
I was consuming it, drinking it, I was putting it in my food. And as far as the twins, they were half breastfed and half on formula, so I would also mix it in with the formula as well.
And fast forwarding a little while, when did you first notice that Lyric was getting sick?
It was a little after Thanksgiving of 2020, around that same week. I noticed that she was a little lethargic and not playful, just low energy, kind of like in a drunkish type state. Eyes rolling in the back of her head. Those symptoms gradually got worse daily. So I decided to just go ahead and take her to the ER after the second day of those symptoms getting worse.
And so you took her to the ER. Shane, can I have 575, page 2, please? And if you look up at the top here, it says Lyric Williams. And so the 29th is about your recollection of when you took her?
Yes.
And it notes here that she was vomiting. Do you recall that?
Yes. The vomiting was more than it would be for a child. It was excessive vomiting like an adult, almost kind of like a shootout of liquid. She couldn't keep anything down. So that was what prompted me to take her to the ER, was the vomiting.
And did they do any blood work for Lyric at this ER?
Not at that first visit, no.
So did you get discharged shortly after?
Yes, they just prescribed her nausea medicine for the babies. And so they told me that if the symptoms worse, to bring her back. But at that moment, when they tested the nausea medicine on her, it works at that time in front of them, but when I took her home, it just worsened.
So after you were discharged, how was Lyric still doing after that?
The same state. She had not gotten any better. I tried to up the dose because the dosage was half of the pill, which was like a tiny pill. Then the second, or I don't remember if it was the second time, but a few times after, I gave her a full pill just to see if that would help. And nothing can keep her from vomiting.
And besides the vomiting, did you notice any other symptoms?
Yeah, her skin was very clammy, cold, and that indicated to me that something was absolutely wrong. When I pick her up, it was like I was holding dead weight. You know, her head was like a bobblehead, she couldn't hold her own head up. And that was really alarming for me.
And how old was Lyric when this was happening?
They were 7 months, it was the day after they turned 7 months.
And so what happened next after these symptoms were occurring?
I took them to their pediatrician, and, well, I took Lyric to their pediatrician and she examined her. And from that point, she told me to just go ahead and take her to the ER, which was like right across the street.
And when you got to the ER, did they admit Lyric?
They did. They immediately admitted her, and started running like tests on her and putting a bunch of different like wires and tubes on her.
And was Lyric responsive or awake by the time you got to Sunrise?
Oh, at that point she was unconscious, or I want to say sleeping, but no, she wasn't responsive at all.
And Shane, if we can pull up exhibit 575, I'm sorry, page 11. And if we look here in the middle of the page, we have Lyric's AST and ALT numbers. Do you see where it says at her presentation at Sunrise, her AST levels were 5,393 and her ALT levels were 805? And is that your recollection?
Yeah, yes.
And Shane, if we go to page 16 of that same exhibit, at the very top in the first sentence, it says that the PICU, which is the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, was emergently consulted and they performed emergent intubation in the resuscitation bay for acute encephalopathy. Do you recall that happening?
Yes, it's the swelling of the brain, yes.
And as far as the intubation, what did it feel like to be there when it happened?
Yes, everything was pretty much happening so fast. They immediately, like I said, put her into a bunch of different tubes and put her on fluids, and I remember the doctor at Sunrise telling me that her liver is failing at that moment.
And did you understand how serious the condition was at that time?
No, I didn't understand how serious. I mean, I knew that it was serious, but I didn't understand how it got to that point as to how could this actually be liver failing? She's just a baby. So I couldn't grasp exactly what was going on and why we were at that point.
So, were you ever made aware of the need for a liver transplant for Lyric?
Yes.
And hearing that news, what was that like?
Devastating, heartbreaking. I didn't understand the concept of her needing to have a transplant, her liver transplant. I just remember that they told me that she was going to need a liver transplant and that they were looking into putting her in a different facility because they don't operate on liver transplants out here. So it's just a bunch of information coming at me at once, but they just told me you need to go pack and prepare to get ready to fly to whichever facility we decide we want to take her in, but she needs a transplant right now.
And Shane, can you pull up exhibit 794? Can you tell the jury what's happening here?
This is Lyric, and she is she's unconscious because at this part they had to put her in this little bubble thing because she was extremely cold. Like I said, her skin was clammy, and they needed to make sure that they kept her body temperature warm, so they put her in this thing that to keep her body temperature at the level that it needed to be in. So.
And was this right before you went on the plane?
Yeah, this was in preparation of, I think they were deciding to put her in UCLA or primaries in Utah. And during that process, this is what was going on.
And Shane, can we pull up exhibit 575, page 38, please? So similar to the other parents, you also have to fill out a transfer form. We see here at the top, it says diagnosis, acute hepatic failure. Was that your understanding of Lyric's diagnosis?
Yes, acute hepatic liver failure.
And on the right-hand side towards the bottom, that was your signature, correct?
Yes,
And sorry, Shane, can make it go all the way back to the top. In the box, it says patient is unstable. Do you see that there?
yes,
And so the box says that the patient is unstable, but transfer is medically indicated in the best interest of the patient. Is that your understanding of why you needed to fly to Utah?
yes.
And what was it like? What was that plane flight like?
This was around like Christmas time, so it was cold and I remember it was overnight, like in the AMs, like 2 a.m. So I remember carrying her walking with her onto that flight. And it was nerve-wracking. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what was gonna happen when we got there. What was going through my mind is just making sure that my baby was okay. I just didn't even really know how to process that. But just seeing her in that condition, it just made me feel like I wasn't doing something right, like I missed something. So it was a horror film, to be honest.
And when you arrived at primary, was Lyric responsive? Was she
No.
awake?
No.
And Shane, if we can put up 575, page 129. And you see here at the very bottom, I'm sorry, Shane, page 50, I apologize, my part. At the very 575, page 50, sorry. At the bottom there, it says that her ASTs and ALTs had actually were 5,393 and 805. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And now page 129, I'm sorry, Shane. Couple days in the hospital, were her labs getting better?
Couple of days in the hospital, no.
And so we see here on 129 that she has worsening labs. Is that your recollection?
Yes.
And so her ASTs were then 2,549 and her ALTs were 1,120.
I'm not sure you're on the same
Oh.
page.
Page 129, Jane. 575. Third paragraph down. Bottom sentence. Okay, perfect. 2,549 and the ALTs were 1,122. Is that your recollection that her labs were worsening?
Yes.
And so at this time, we were with Lyric. What's happening with London?
With London, she got sick a little bit after Lyric. I got the call from my dad that my parents had London, so my dad called me in the midst of transitioning to get on the plane with Lyric, and he told me that she was experiencing the same symptoms and that she might need to go to the hospital just to be examined as well. So their dad had came to, pick up the exchange with my dad, and he stayed with London at sunrise until they examined her. And then I got a call from him saying that she was going to need to be flown to primary as well. But she didn't get to us until about 12 hours after Lyric was at primary. So she didn't join us until later on.
And your understanding of why was London transferred to primary as well?
She had the same exact acute hepatic liver failure.
And Shane, if we can put up 585, page 69. And London was also then transferred to primaries, correct?
Yes.
And on the page there, it says that she was diagnosed with life-threatening acute liver failure. Was that your understanding? The second paragraph down.
Yes.
And so at this time, you had 2 7-month-old daughters in ICUs. What was that moment like?
I was pretty much just devastated. I mean, at the time when London got there, Larry was unconscious, and I had gotten the information that she had swelling, damaged tissue on the brain was what was the words that was said to me about Derek. And then when London came, she came by herself. Her dad did not come with her, so she flew on the plane by herself with no familiar faces. And by the time she got to us, she was just completely hysterical, crying. She hadn't slept. And they immediately put her into the same situation of getting her prepared with tubes. Everything was just happening so fast about what was going on with my boys. I had to sign off a waiver for London to get a catheter in her arm so they can start drawing blood. And at the same time, Lyric, they were having problems drawing blood from her. So it was just so much coming at me at the same time. I just really didn't know how to handle the situation at all. So
And unfortunately, the twins' father was no longer in the picture after you were on the plane, is that correct?
yes,
So you were in the hospital alone?
yes.
And were the twins treated in the same room when they first got to the hospital?
When they first got to the hospital, yes, they did bring London in, and they were in separate rooms, but right next to each other. But not too long after that, they ended up separating them, and they had them in 2 different departments on 2 different floors, is what I remember.
And so you were forced to go between both the girls?
Yes, that was the hardest part for me, is just trying to keep up with what's going on. But for them to be separated, I don't know why. I don't remember why they were separated. But London was put in a department that was completely far away from where we were, and in that room she was pretty much by herself. So just having to leave her to go run to Lyric to see if she was okay and then come back to London. Most of the time London was up, she was not unconscious, so to happen to leave her to go see her twin and for her to be hysterical and crying, it was just a very tough situation for me to be in, and to see them in the conditions that they were. It was very hard. It was very hard to have to see them in that situation.
So you mentioned that London was awake, but still at this point, Lyric had not woken up.
No.
Shane, can you have exhibit 795, please? Can you tell the jury what's happening here?
Yeah, this is Lyric, and she had a little movement there. This was in the chaos of me running back and forth, but Lyric had not woken up yet, and she, I think they're kind of switching out different blankets because she was very, very, very cold. and they were just trying to keep her warm. Here, you can see that she was unconscious. And she had a breathing tube in her mouth.
Was it difficult to see lyric like this?
Yes. Yes.
Is it hard for you to talk about this?
Yes.
Hard to go back to that moment? So, Shane, can you put up exhibit 595, page 1? Can you tell me who this one is?
That's London. This was her second day, or third day, I think. This is her first signs of calm, and this was the first day she hadn't been crying and hysterical, and so I had put a toy in front of her just to see how she responded to the toy. And she was, as you can see, she's very swollen. But that was her first good day.
And Shane, can we get 597, page 1?
And tell me about this one.
That was Lyric's first good day as well. That was her first day waking up since she was admitted. And she was also very swollen. Her eyes were swollen shut. That was the first time she opened her eyes. So I was very happy.
So this was a little celebration picture.
Yes.
So after several days, it was your understanding that London's liver enzyme started to decrease and get better, correct?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Was London's liver enzymes getting better?
Hers, yes. London was, yes.
And were they drinking real water in the hospital?
In the hospital, no.
And there was still a couple more days left that you had to stay in the hospital. What was your understanding of why you had to stay in the hospital?
London got better within a few days, so within a week she was better, but Lyric, she was fluctuating with her issues. I think it was the brain swelling that was fluctuating, and it was about like 3 or 4, it was about like 2 or 3 times that we were scheduled to go home and then having to stay. But that second week that we stayed there was solely based on Lyric, her brain swelling going up and down.
And how long did you guys end up staying in the hospital?
Like 13 days, 14 days, a little under 2 weeks.
And so you finally got cleared to be discharged. What did coming home look like?
We left the hospital, I called the lift, and we went to the airport. I flew home on a regular flight. I remember I had to get a whole stroller because the stroller that I had didn't fit through every door, so I had to go and run and get another stroller that was in line so that I can fit it through every door. And I had more bags than what I normally came in with, so trying to get the girls through the airport, and it snowed out there, I remember, so it was COVID, so I expected it to be spacious on the plane, but they had every seat that was filled, which was nerve-wracking to me, which gave me more anxiety about close-knit spaces with the girls. But it was a good flight. We got home, and it took us about another 30 minutes to get home from the airport once we got to Vegas. But once I got the girls home, I let everybody know we were good, we were safe. I turned off my phone, I closed my blinds, and I put my babies in the car, in the bed with me, and I just bawled my eyes out. That was when I really let it out and just tried to process what took place, and I still had no idea of like how they got sick. So I was just happy to have them home, but just frustrated that it actually happened.
And we saw in the previous pictures that Lyric had a tube that was running for her nose. What was that tube?
A feeding tube.
And was Lyric able to get off of the feeding tube when she came home?
No, she stayed on the feeding tube for about a week or two after that. She still wasn't eating on her own, but whereas still, as far as her liver and her brain issues, that was good enough for her to come home, but the feeding was still an issue.
And Shane, if you can put up 575, page 65, in the fourth paragraph down, second to last sentence. It says in your discharge documentation that she had suspect difficulty with feeding due to prior nothing by mouth status, intubation, and complicated hospital course. Is that your understanding of why Lyric couldn't get off of the feeding tube?
Yes.
And what was that like? What did you have to do when you were home with her with that?
So we had a home nurse that was assigned to us immediately, and she came to our home the day after we came home. And she had to explain to me that I had to learn how to put the feeding tube into her nose to make sure that she got fed every few hours. They put her on a machine. I, however, wasn't really comfortable with that because I didn't know how to, operate that. But I was the one that would have to switch or feed her every 2 hours. So I had to learn how to put that tube into her nose, which was I didn't want to damage anything any more than what she already was going through. So my goal was to get her off the feeding tube, but it was I just felt so sorry for them, and I felt like that I just wasn't experienced enough to be able to take care of them in that capacity. So I did my best. I did what the doctor told me to do, or what the nurse told me to do as far as handling that situation. I made sure that I did it right.
And these girls are your first and only child, right? Children.
Yes, they're my babies. They're my only babies, and they're the only babies I can't have. So it was a wild pregnancy to be pregnant during COVID, and then to give birth alone because of the procedures. I couldn't have any family, and I can't have any more children. So this is it for me, and then to go from no kids to 2 kids in an instant, and I'm in postpartum. I remember that. So trying to grasp new momhood in this new world that's going on, with trying to grasp my emotions and then look at them and to see them in that position that they were in, I just didn't really know how to handle it all. And I did my absolute best to make sure that my girls are, happy and healthy. But it was the most difficult time in my life that I've ever had to experience. But yeah, these are my only babies. This is it for me.
What's it like now when the twins get sick?
I don't know how to turn it off. It's just constant anxiety. They're 4 years old now, so they're at a point where they're running and jumping and climbing on things, and my anxiety is through the roof with that. So anytime they get hurt, or anytime they have a scratch or whatever the case, I'm ready to take them to the hospital, because I don't know, with this extreme incident happening to them, I don't know what's next. So I'm always on my P's and Q's about every little thing that happens to them. So.
And are you aware of the potential permanent injuries that the children might have suffered?
Yes.
And is that something that concerns you?
Yes.
And to the extent that the experts recommend monitoring of various services, are you committed to seeking those for the twins?
Yes.
And what about for yourself?
Yes.
And I know this has been difficult, but how are the girls doing today?
They're good today. They're good. they're doing great. They're sibling rivalry right now of who has to be first in everything. So they're happy, and they're getting ready to do gymnastics and soccer, which is very nerve-wracking for me with the gymnastics thing. But they're just the happiest little girls, and that smile that they have on their face every day just kind of lets me know that I'm doing it right, and they're healthy, they're good, and just to move on from there, just to kind of move on and live life from here.
Thank you, Sante. Those are the questions I have for you.
Thank you.
Any cross?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Williams, good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
My name's Shola, I represent Real Water. Are you okay to proceed?
Yes.
Awesome. I'd like to ask you a little bit about the twins. Currently, they are in preschool.
Yes.
And what is London's favorite subject and Lyric's favorite subject? What do they like to do in school?
Subjects, I probably would say the only thing would be like creative writing, which is what they do a lot. London is more the expressive one, so she is leaning towards the drawing and painting, and Lyric, she's more so of the building block, so she likes to build and play with her baby dolls. So they have like a home ec thing in their class too, so she's really into kitchen and cooking, and so.
Terrific. And the sports, so you said the gymnastics and soccer?
Yeah, that's next. That's the next stage.
You just signed them up for it?
I have not yet, but I have talked to some coaches and classes to get them prepared for the next sessions.
And I take it that preschool is out for the summer now?
They go to an all-round
Oh,
school, so they won't be out until July.
okay, wonderful. And it's my understanding that in 2021 or so, you got a little bit of counseling for the twins, is that right?
Yes, they had a cognitive behavioral therapy at My Left Foot Children's Therapy.
And how did that go?
That went good. We were there for a couple of months, and they were showing signs of development, and yeah,
Good.
from what I understand.
So they're progressing.
Yes.
Since that initial evaluation in 2020, have they gotten any other counseling?
That counseling, yes, we also had an in-home therapist too. I'm not sure what that name of that, I don't remember what the name of that was. I know it was cognitive behavioral therapy, and I believe it was physical therapy. And that went on for the whole year of 2021, the in-home therapy.
And my understanding is that you met with Dr. Sands to talk about some future counseling via Zoom. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you recall what you talked about?
Vaguely, I know it was, I had more than one Zoom call with a therapist, so I vaguely which conversation,
Okay, no worries.
yeah.
Did you know Dr. Sands is here today?
Yes.
And did you get a chance to talk to him in person since he came?
No.
Now, you understand as part of this litigation, Real Water has admitted that its product, the water, will make your children sick.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
You're aware that Real Water has admitted that its product made your children sick.
Yes.
I'm very sorry about that. And I want to thank you for describing to the jury what you went through.
Thank
I understand that's not easy, getting up before strangers, before me, answering questions. I apologize. I just want to wrap up with a couple other things. My understanding is that the treatment for lyric was about $319,000. Do you have any understanding one way or the other?
Yes,
Does that sound about right?
yes,
And the treatment for London was about $174,000?
yes.
That was all the questions I had. Oh, you, how are you doing? That's the most important question.
I'm good. I'm good for the most part. But it's up and down. You know, I guess to my close friends, I'm known as the anxiety mom because it's just, you know, I just have this what if in the back of my mind of you never know. But ultimately, I am doing good. I am doing good.
Good for you. You intend to get any counseling for yourself?
Yes.
Ms. Williams, again, very sorry for what you went through. Very nice to meet you. And thank you for answering my questions and for answering Ms. Switzler's questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any read there?
No, Your Honor.
Any questions from any viewers? Okay, thank you very much. So, just watch your step. Counsel, if you come to it. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for lunch, come back at 1:10. So 1:10. During this recess, you must not to talk or converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not read, watch, or listen to any report of the commentary on the trial or any person connected with the trial by any medium of information, including without limitation to social media, text, newspapers, television, internet, radio. Do not visit the scene of events mentioned during the trial. Do not undertake any investigation. Do not do any post communications on any social networking sites. Do not do any independent research, including internet searches. Do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with the trial until the case finds submitted to you. See you back at 1:10.
Please rise for the jury.
Anything we need to discuss?
No.
Thank you. Anything we need to discuss?
We're going to have some quick witnesses this afternoon. I think it'd be efficient to discuss our objection to Dr. Sands just for the record, and then we can get it out of the way, and then there won't be an interruption later.
Okay. Okay.
Your Honor, obviously
Still
we have,
10 more minutes.
sorry, Your Honor.
That's okay. I cut you off.
Sorry, Your Honor. I just, hearing also, I missed it. So, really quickly on Dr. Sands, obviously we had a prior objection about the motion for summary judgment, motion to strike. We understand the court's ruling, we're just not waiving that objection. The second issue is a relatively newer one. Dr. Sands has a PowerPoint, plaintiff has a PowerPoint for Dr. Sands. In it is future damages for the children, future damages for the parents. Those damages have not been reduced to present cash value, and that's our objection.
Say that last part again.
The damage has not been produced. I know you don't have the court, doesn't have it in front of them, but basically what Dr. Sands did is he opined as to the cost for future damages for both the parents and the children, but it has not been reduced to a present cash value. It's basically here's how much it's going to cost each time they do these various things, and here's the minimum and here's the maximum amount it will cost for each of the parents, rather than reducing to present cash value like they did with Layla Kadeh, who's obviously no longer part of this particular trial. So that's our objection.
Yeah, before we turn it over, is there a case or a statute that I should look at in terms of being required to reduce to, or do that present cash value reduction?
Yeah, I believe there is. I don't have it in front of me. Unfortunately, I just was handed this morning, but my understanding is that the other problem becomes when you put prejudgment interest on those things. Obviously, you can't put prejudgment interest on future damages. We're going to have an argument over the verdict form when we get there, but that's the current status.
Judge, I think the reason there's not a case is basically they're asking the impossible. They're asking us to forecast what the inflation rate is for the next 40 years. They're asking us to do what the discount rate is for the next 40 years. We bring in economists to do that, and that gets pretty hokey pokey. So I think, the appropriate point to address this, if he wants to file a motion to reduce the verdict, if he thinks it's inflated because of that reason, I think that would be appropriate. But right now, I mean, how can anyone predict? Okay, assuming for the sake of argument, they go for medical monitoring once a year for the next 20 years, 30 years, it costs $500. So we have to project the cost of medical inflation, and that cost is a general cost. That doesn't mean this specific test is really going to go down. We have to project a discount rate, bring it back down, what's going to be the discount rate during this time period. I mean, it's a pretty hokey-pokey kind of guesstimate kind of thing. And they don't have an economist to do this. So I think if they think the number's going to be so large that it needs some adjustment, they should ask the court to do it at the end of the case. Right? That'd be our position.
Any rebuttal?
No, Your Honor, I think that encapsulates the issue, and I certainly be happy to answer any questions, but I think that frames the issue.
And I forgot to mention, to duck this issue last time, what we agreed to do is we agreed to, I think it was $50,000 for monitoring, but we didn't have a psychological component, which is a little larger, so that's why there hasn't been an agreement this time. I think we'll still try to get an agreement so we can duck these issues, but let's let Dr. Sands present it.
Your Honor, we may work on it, we may resolve it, we may not, but these are numbers that are going to be displayed in front of the jury, so we don't want to waive any objection. So we want to make sure that the record's clear, and I think the record's fairly clear.
It certainly is. My hesitation right now is I'm not sure whether reduction to present cash value of alleged future medical treatments is required or not. I remember some things, I don't remember others. This one I don't. I'm going to go off the record for a couple minutes at least.
Thank you.
So it sounds like there's some type of stipulation.
Yes, Your Honor, we have two stipulations for the future medical monitoring costs, liver function tests, for lack of a better word. We're agreeing that the cost for those would be $50,000 a plaintiff. That, there's no jury question to resolve that. We agree that that is reasonable and necessary for the future care of all of the plaintiffs. No prejudgment.
You understand
No
what we just
prejudgment.
did?
For the future psychological damages, we have two different numbers. The jury will still be asked if you find that you
Which
believe that it's
stipulates
necessary
in the
for
stipulation.
the plaintiffs.
There's a max and there's a minimum, and we just came to an agreement.
Question. But the amount
These
is agreed
slides aren't
upon
gonna
now.
say the dollar amount.
It's
You don't talk about the dollar
$275,000
amount, I'm not
for
gonna
the
ask
5
you.
children each,
And we're not gonna do this, but we're just gonna say the
and
types
it
of
is
treatment. Why they need
$60,000
it,
for
and we
each of
just
the
make it
parents. So you go through the parents just because we have some single parents. George Morales, Ryan Carrier, Erica Carrier, Christopher Brian Wren, Emily Wren, and Sante Williams, excuse me. Oh, and Mr. Tagana, who is not on our sheet. So we fixed the typo, we didn't add him.
Well, we're doing 60,000 on him too, Your Honor.
We're doing 60,000 on him.
And no prejudgment interest on those figures.
That is the agreement, we agree.
So, you all have that written down somewhere?
We will reduce it to writing. That agreement is reached just now, Your
Yeah,
Honor.
yeah. Okay. I took notes as best I could too, but I relied more on you all. Okay, perfect. Anything else?
No, Issue resolved. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Please rise for the jury. Please be seated.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your service and for your patience. Very much appreciate both. Ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
We call Steve Wadkins, W-A-D-K-I-N-S.
Mr. Watkins. Step. You would remain standing, face the clerk. Raise your right hand and be sworn in.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated. State and spell your first and last name for the record.
Steve Watkins, S-T-E-V-E, W-A-D as in Delta, K-I-N-S.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Mr. Watkins, where do you live?
Las Vegas.
And how long have you been here?
I was born and raised,
Where'd you go to high school?
Valley High School,
Vikings, right?
correct.
What do you do for a living?
Home inspector,
And are you familiar with a product known as real water?
yes, sir.
And how are you familiar with that product?
I drank real water for a long time.
Don't be nervous, Mr. Watkins.
Okay.
And how long did you drink it?
I believe since 2014, 15.
What attracted you to real water?
It was, they had some type of marketing. It was like a big hydration for your body.
And can you tell the jury how much real water you usually drink? Say on a weekly basis, however's good for you.
Yes, sir. I drank a lot of water. I drank between 2 to 3 plus liters a day. And I measure that.
Did there come a time you noticed that you weren't feeling well?
Yes, I won't forget that. That was my 35th wedding anniversary. It was May 25th, 2018.
What happened?
I wasn't feeling good. I started getting a little dizzy. And my granddaughter that I raised, I told her that, I think she was 10 at the time. Told her that, no, we have to go home. And as soon as I went home, I went directly to bed, and I didn't wake up. It's kind of hard to explain. My words is like I was in a coma state. It was like being a mummy. I knew what was going on, but I could not communicate. I lost my vision, my speech. I couldn't walk. It was probably the most scariest thing in my life that I went through. And my wife and my granddaughter Destiny, they tried to feed me water, which was real water, made me drink, and I was trying to communicate to them that you're going to drown me because I'm laying down. And at that time, that's when my wife took me to the hospital. Well, she had to get some people to pick me up.
Which hospital was it?
I was admitted to Desert Springs.
And how long did you stay there?
I think it was a week.
What'd they tell you at the hospital?
They ran a lot of tests on me. They ran, the doctor said they may have to do a biopsy on my liver. They said I had liver failure. My enzymes were skyrocket. They were actually telling my wife because I couldn't communicate. And then they, at So soon as I came to, I got my vision, then the doctors told me to stop drinking the water that I was drinking, and told me that that he was going to release me.
Okay. And did you share this with Real Water?
No, sir.
Did someone in your family share this experience with Real Water?
Through an email.
And can you, Shane, can I have exhibit 41, please? So let's go to key part, Shane. Right there at the bottom. This is an email your wife sent to Real Water?
Yes, sir.
Now, after this date, let's go to the top, Shane, get the date down. After June 20th, 2018, did you hear anything back from Real Water?
No, sir.
Did they send an investigator to talk to you while you were in the hospital?
No, sir.
Or at home?
No, sir.
Anybody call you?
No, sir.
Didn't send any flowers to the hospital?
No, sir.
Sympathy card?
No, sir.
No contact whatsoever?
Objection, Your Honor, it has to be answered.
No, sir.
They offered to pay your medical bills.
No, sir.
Objection.
Have you filed?
Hold on, I got, objection,
If they already answered, Your Honor.
well, so a motion to strike, but I'm not sure the basis yet.
It's just relevance, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Let's try again, Mr. Wadkins. Did they offer at any time to pay your medical bills?
No, sir.
Have you filed a claim against Real Water for your medical bills? And other damage?
Suing him.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wadkins.
Yes, sir.
Any cross?
Yes, very briefly, Your Honor.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Mr. Watkins. How are you doing today?
Good, sir.
First, I'm very sorry about what happened to you. Just wanted to ask you a couple of follow-up questions. When the doctor, you said the doctor told you, and I believe I tried to write down your direct quote, and I apologize if I got it wrong. Stop drinking the water you were drinking.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen the email your wife sent to Real Water before?
The one that was just up?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And it says you should just stop drinking alkaline water generally, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned you're suing Real Water, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kemp is your attorney?
Yes, sir.
As part of your lawsuit, you remember filling out a fact sheet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And part of that fact sheet included the days you were hospitalized, correct?
I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but if I seen it, I can verify.
Okay. So if you saw it, it would help refresh your recollection?
Sure.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I just want to show
No,
you one copy for you. Here, Mr. Watkins. Go ahead and take your time, look through it, and then when you're ready, I can ask you a couple of quick questions.
Tell me which page.
Well, okay, why don't we start with page 1, just to confirm. Personal information, that is your name, your address, and then your personal information, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this appears to be your fact sheet, correct?
Yes, it is.
And if we go to page 11, which is the last page of your fact sheet,
Okay.
there's a declaration. Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and you signed this declaration under penalty of perjury, correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if we go to page 5, you see there's a Roman numeral 4, and underneath it there's a indent under F1, and that's the injury claims you're making against Real Water, correct?
Where's it at?
So there's a big Roman numeral 4 that says injury claims at the top, and if you go down, there's paragraph F.
F as in Frank?
F as in Frank, yes, I apologize.
No, that's,
Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the first treater you list is St. Rose Sienna Hospital, and that is when you were first hospitalized, correct?
Yes, sir.
According to this, you were hospitalized from May 26, 2018 to May 27, 2018, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the next place, and after you were released, you then returned to Desert Springs Hospital, is that correct?
That's correct.
And if we flip to the next page, that is from, you were hospitalized from 5/29/2018 to 5/31/2018, is that correct?
On your pages.
Did I mess up the pages on you? I apologize if I did. It should be double-sided, so it should just be on the reverse of that.
Okay. So what was your question? I'm sorry.
Okay, you were at, sorry, let me go back. You were at Desert Springs Hospital from 5/29/18 to 5/31/18, correct?
If it says this,
Okay, and I'm not trying to trick you, I'm just trying to
yeah,
confirm that this is what this says. And the next two treaters, Dr. Reddy and Dr. Hickel, those are both outpatient treatments largely?
yes, sir, Dr. Reddy is my doctor.
Okay. So according to your fact sheet, you were hospitalized for a total of 3 days, correct?
On the deposition, one of your attorneys asked me that same thing, and I was in there longer than 3 days, I believe.
You believe? But that's not what your fact sheet says, right, sir?
Well, I'm just telling you.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wadkins, whether you were in there 5 days, 15 days, 50 days, you contacted Real Water and told them about it, Bree White.
Yes, sir.
And this was in May or June of 2018?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, no one contacted you at any point in time?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions from any jurors? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to call Dr. Stephen Sante.
Dr. Sante? Do it, remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk, please sworn in, please.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated. State and spell your first and last name for the record.
Stephen Sands, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, Sands, S-A-N-D-S.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Sands.
Hi,
Dr. Sands, what do you do for a living?
I am a pediatric neuropsychologist.
Can you tell us a little bit about your educational background, please?
Of course. I earned my bachelor's in psychology at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and then got my master's and doctorate in child and school psychology through New York University, and then completed my fellowship in clinical neuropsychology in pediatrics and adult throughout the entire Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center.
Can you tell us a little bit about what Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center is?
Of course. It is a very large and prominent cancer hospital that attracts patients from all over the country, all over the world. We pride ourselves on giving really good care to patients, as well as having novel treatments that aren't always available at other institutions.
Okay, now, you did your fellowship there after you got your doctoral degree. Have you been there ever since, or how did you get there?
Right, thanks for asking. I went to New York University Medical Center, where I was the director of the psychosocial program that provides in pediatric cancer, that provides counseling to the children and the parents, as well as neuropsychological testing, which I'll explain later, for about 6 years. And then I was recruited to go to Columbia University Medical Center, where I did the same thing. I ran the psychosocial program for counseling and neuropsych testing for 15 years. And then I was recruited back 7 years ago to return back to Memorial Sloan Kettering to build a brand new pediatric neuropsychology clinical program to provide clinical care as well as research, because they didn't have it, they were referring everybody out. So I wanted to take that responsibility and that challenge on, and it's gone really well.
What's your current position at MSK?
I am I'm the director of the pediatric neuropsychology program. And again, there's 2 parts, and if we have the opportunity, I'd love to explain briefly both parts. I'm also a professor of psychology through the Weill Cornell Medical School. And I also teach a class in neuroscience and education at Teachers College, which is affiliated with Columbia University. I'm an adjunct full professor there. And I don't know how time has flown, but it's been over 25 years, and I enjoy it, never look back.
Dr. Sands, can you tell the jury a little bit about how it is that a pediatric neuropsychologist is involved in treating pediatric cancer patients?
Of course. There's 2 components that I'm saying to you before: clinical, supportive, and also neuropsych testing. So as you can imagine, the clinical part is to work with children to help normalize the experience as best as you can, of all ages, children, adolescents, young adults, but also clearly to work with parents to help stabilize their world, and help them advocate for how to speak to their doctors, how to ask for help from their neighbors when they say, "Oh, I'm fine, I don't need any help." And then working with them throughout treatment. They basically come back to the hospital once a week for their clinic, because these diagnoses are anywhere from 6 months to a year to 3 years long, so you get to know them really, really well. And also the neuropsychological is, what we want to do is, fortunately, we're doing a much better job at curing kids with cancer. Unfortunately, some of the treatments, while they cure them, impact their brain functioning. So we want to make sure that we maximize their survivorship and help minimize any difficulties they have, so they can go back to school and no longer be patients, but be students and fit in well. And some kids need more help than others. So it's both support during treatment, which you can imagine is quite stressful, as well as helping them into survivorship to get back to their best as possible regular lives.
I'll ask you more about survivorship in just a moment. But just a general question about neuropsychology. Is it fair to say that there's neuropsychologists that treat pediatric patients and there's others who treat adult patients?
Absolutely, yes.
Could you explain the difference between pediatric patients and adults?
Of course. I went to school to work with pediatric patients, and that's a very different type of situation where you're working with kids of all ages, literally preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, graduate school. And their brains are developing continually. It never stops, but clearly throughout childhood and young adulthood. And you're also working with parents, because as the parent goes, if you can support the parents, then the child will follow. So that's also really important. And you're working with school systems, you're meeting with teachers, making recommendations for help in the classroom, extra help, and we'll talk about it later, whether they need occupational therapy or physical therapy or reading help or math help. So an adult neuropsychologist would obviously work with a different population, those who have generally finished school, so there's less of an educational component. You're not working with their parents, and again, as I said, not working with their school, and you have issues of trying to help them get back to their work and make sure their family's functioning fairly well. But it's a different type of engagement that you have.
Okay, so Dr. Sands, can you now explain to the jury this concept of survivorship that you mentioned?
Of course. So as I was mentioning, there's the diagnosis phase and the treatment phase, which requires a fair amount of hand-holding and support. And then once they're done with treatment, it's not okay, goodbye, congratulations. We do say that, but we also want to follow up. So some of the treatments, as I said, my focus is on what impacts the treatment, whether it's chemotherapy that's in their veins or their spine or radiation to their head, and there's all different types of amounts and volumes. What types of problems they may have in the future based on literature and studies. And then there are other colleagues in survivorship who will similarly look at their pulmonary functioning, growth, hormone, endocrine in terms of growth hormone, cardiotoxicity, vision difficulties, high frequency hearing loss. These diagnoses and treatments can impact different organs, different systems. And so while I'm involved in all of them, my main focus is neuropsychological, the brain, And the brain, again, is, yes, it's IQ, it's cognitive, but it's also regulates your social functioning, your emotional functioning, your behavioral functioning, academic, as well as your intelligence. So it's many different pieces.
Thank you, Doctor. Are there times in your practice where you would recommend treatment for a patient even after they've beaten cancer and become cancer-free?
Yes, we do it all the time. It's and again, the survivorship clinics I was mentioning too, it's generally every year that they come back to you, and you recommend, hearing test or, a bone density test, or my, neuropsychological testing. But yes, again, it's a function of how old they were, because young age at diagnosis, and there's no safe age. Every study looks at young versus old is significant for the young kids doing worse. But clearly, in this situation, which we'll talk about, under 3, under 5, under 6 is very old, and that's a huge risk factor. So you want to be mindful of what are the risk factors, what was their diagnosis, where in their body did it impact their brain, either through it was in their brain or the treatment involved their brain. Other risk factors are socioeconomic status, opportunities for support. So yes, all that to say, that if there's a child who is struggling now after treatment, we want to assess them. But also, if there's children who are not yet struggling, because the cancer cures them, they don't come out a different person right after treatment. I'll show you a slide later that I think really captures this, what I'm trying to explain. But if they are at risk for developing problems in the future, we want to closely monitor them so that we can catch it early and close the gap and help them, not wait till it's a huge problem and you're really impossible to catch up.
Dr. Sands, this is a visual that you prepared that I believe
Yes.
may help foster some understanding about catching things early. If you prefer to get off the stand to do this, or could you explain what this slide illustrates?
Of course. So this is particularly a concept that is published in an article on pediatric brain tumor patients, but it applies to all people who have injury to their brains and are not functioning at the same rate as their peers. So for IQ, as you get older, just to stay at 100, and 100 is right in the middle of all, just to stay at IQ of 100 is right smack dab in the middle. It's the 50th percentile. You're compared to every 100 kids. So if you're 50th percentile, you're in the middle of 100. So this is what's considered exactly average and normal. So just as they get older, their raw score would go up. You're expected at 6 to know more information than 7, 8, 9. You keep learning and learning. So this slope keeps them treading water at right in the middle of the average range. And then what you do is when you look up the norms, you look at their raw score and you look up how old they are, and that's how you come up with their score. In contrast, those who have impaired or damaged brain functioning are learning, because it is positively sloped. It's not flat, it's not going down, they're not demented or losing abilities. They are growing, but it's at 65 to 75% of the rate of their peers from a variety of issues, whether it's attention, which we'll talk about, their processing speed. So while they are learning, you can see that they're falling further and further behind as they get older. So the whole point of neuropsych testing and social, emotional, and behavioral is to catch them here to close the gap and not wait till, I think we have a problem, the child has to repeat 4th grade and they can't read, which happens a lot, but we're trying to avoid that. And then as a runner, my analogy is that if we all of us ran a race at 10K, and you were faster than me by a full minute, we start the same. But an hour in, you're up here, and 2 hours in, you're up here. And I'm still running, and I'm moving forward, but the gap is getting wider because you're faster than me. So it's the same exact concept.
Thank you, Dr. Sands. Dr. Sands, it sounds like part of your job is recommending treatment for patients in the future. Is that fair?
Yes.
Do you profess to have a crystal ball or know what's going to happen in the future?
No, absolutely not. I try to be guided by data, try to be guided by research, my 25 years of experience working with families and kids, and try to predict who's at risk for more probable than not having problems, again, not cognitive, academic, socially, emotionally, behaviorally, and I want to be responsible. I want to make sure that I'm on top of them and support them. So in my practice, There are kids I see every 2 years for 10, 15 years until they're out of college, and I knew them when they were this big. And that's part of my job, one of the reasons that I love it, to see these kids grow up and help them, support them.
Let's go to the next slide. And Dr. Sands, I'd like to talk to you about your work in this case. What were you asked to do here?
A few things, and they're here as well, is to review the medical records for each of the 5 plaintiffs, which were extensive. Dr. Hudson, who's the liver specialist for each child, reviewed the parents' depositions that were taken previously. I met with every parent over Zoom for a full hour and asked how their child was doing, if they have friends, what's their sleep like, what's their appetite like, what do they do for fun, how are they doing, in their school program. Then I also administered and reviewed the BASC. It's basically a social emotional behavioral questionnaire that's the standard of care for clinical service. It has about, say 400 questions. And then once they're done, it's never, sometimes, often, almost always. And then the computer reorganizes them into categories. So it's internalizing, for example, how anxious are they, how depressed are they. There's also externalizing, are they aggressive, do they have conduct problems? And then it's also looking, which I like a lot about it, it looks for adaptive functioning, like positive things, leadership, social skills, etc. There's one in there for attention, hyperactivity. So this is one of the few tests that not only have age norms, but also gender norms. They're being compared to their age peers, but also their gender peers. So I gave it to each parent to fill out on behalf of their child. As you can imagine, parents know their kids the best and are really reliable. And just one last point about the BASC is it has validity scales, because sometimes, especially in legal settings, people will overinflate, their responses, and they all came back clean, that there was no overinflation, there was no exaggeration of symptoms, so they're valid. So I reviewed them, and then I also, importantly, there's not a lot of literature on pediatric acute liver failure. There's some, and we'll talk about the main articles, and there's even less about hydrazine. There's some about hydrazine with animals. But, so I reviewed all the literature that I could get my hands on.
Dr. Sands, you mentioned reviewing Dr. Hudson's report. Do you understand that Dr. Hudson will opine in this case that the children likely had fibrosis on their livers?
Yes.
Why was that significant to you?
One of the articles that I cited.
Objection. No question.
Okay, Dr.
Thank you, Mr. Mirkovich. Please.
So Dr. Sands, I had asked you about the significance of fibrosis to you as a neuropsychologist, and I think you started to say what that was.
Yes, it is scarring of the tissue, and has, as we'll see in a minute, you have a summary of the articles I looked at, and there's one in particular that's really persuasive on a significant number of patients that shows how problematic it is and how the adults, who have cirrhosis, I'll show you in a minute, have significantly worse cognitive functioning than those who don't.
Okay. Now, the review of the medical records themselves, did you review all of the medical records related to each child's acute liver failure?
Yes.
And what was your general takeaway there?
I think that I was here with Ms. Williams when she talked about her 2 daughters, and I know you've heard from other parents. So the first thing that comes jumping off the page to me is the stress and trauma that the kids went through. And even though they're young, I can tell you for a fact these kids don't forget those experiences, being held down and restrained and being, having blood draws, in different parts of your body because your veins are collapsing every 2 hours, and your feet and your legs. Anyway, so the first thing that jumped out was the trauma that they went through and their parents went through. And we'll talk about it in a moment, but it's so fresh and palpable, you can really cut it with a knife. And I was here when this one I spoke, and I think we both share the same experience. Other things were the incredible presentation of marked decline in their functioning after having drank real water with hydrogen, because, as you can imagine, kids were talked about the parents' emotional reaction for sure. But children's eyes are not supposed to be rolling back in their head. They're not supposed to be sleeping 16 hours. They're not supposed to be unconscious. They're not supposed to be throwing up, having diarrhea, throwing up blood. And so it struck me of the presentation part, and I'll get to answer the full question. The presentation part is really remarkable, and it really demonstrates how the liver is critically important, but that it's connected to other parts of your body. It's not just, oh, they had acute liver failure and it went away. No, it's impacting their brain, which is causing them to be unconscious, causing them to throw up. The brain dictates everything in your body, causing them to sleep 16 hours, etc., have diarrhea. So the interconnectivity between the liver and other organ systems and the brain was remarkable. And then lastly, the medical records of what they went through, first in Las Vegas and being airflown to primary children's in Salt Lake, and I work with them a lot. I have a ton of respect for them. But during COVID, when everyone's masked up, and these kids are in the ICU, and we talked about it a bit, but all the tests they went through and being prepped for potentially liver transplant, and the high liver values, and all the treatments and the machines and the blood draws, I think, so that's what remarked to me. It was the initial presentation of symptoms, how it impacted their physical function, their brain functioning, as well as their liver, and what they went through at the hospital in an emergent situation.
Okay. And now you reviewed the parents' deposition testimony. You also got the chance to speak with them for about an hour. What was your big takeaway there?
Yeah, I think I shared it with you a moment ago, but it was as if it happened yesterday. When they're talking about all the trauma and experiences, it was so remarkable. I know that they're all invested in having their children do well and being optimistic, as we all would, our kids. And I think what's also important is we step back and you realize that William's children were 7 months old, and Christopher was 2, and another child was 21 months. We'll go through it, and one other was 5. So they're all diagnosed very early in life, and one child is not in school, and the rest, so that would be 3 more are in pre-K, so no one's in proper school yet, and 1 is in 2nd grade. So from my perspective as a child psychologist and pediatric neuropsychologist, I'm looking ahead, and this happens a lot with parents, that they are focused on the cure, and they're not, both eyes are at the cure, one eye is not looking at what's next. That's my job, is to say, hey, based on the literature, based on what we know, you need to be mindful of this school, this type of services, these type of support programs to help you then transition well. So these children are at the beginning of schooling. Their brains are going to be developing for the next 20 years. So that's really what struck me, was their optimism, but also the trauma that they spoke about, and as if it was yesterday, 2 days ago.
Next slide, please, Shane. So, Dr. Sands, this slide sets forth some of, I think, what jumped out at you from the BASC or the BASC questionnaire that you had the parents complete. Could you tell us about Severin Morales?
Of course. So Severin was the child who was diagnosed with acute liver failure at 21 months. So his dad, this is an example of optimism. So dad's scores were all in the normal range. There's variability across what I'd said to you before about anxiety, depression, hyperactivity, conduct problems, adaptability, social skills. At the same time, talking to him, he said to me that Severin has trouble paying attention and can't wait to take his turn. I'm not sure if that jumps out at you, but to me, those are symptoms, important symptoms of ADHD. And I'm not classifying him or diagnosing him, but in my red flag goes up and says, hey, here's a child who might have ADHD, because those are classic symptoms. And then he has fine and gross motor difficulties. He has trouble tying his shoes, buttoning his shirt. I'm concerned about that also as a neuropsychologist, because as you can imagine, kids are using their hands all day in school, right? Taking notes, taking tests, typing, writing papers. And if you're having trouble with your gross motor, that's difficult to keep up in sports, and that's a place where kids kind of have their social status. But also fine motor is really going to be difficult in school. So his was normal range. He was the only parent who marked his kid as being normal, but then talked about these other issues. And every other family, which I'll explain to you, had some specific areas of concern.
Let's talk about Hera Carrier next.
So Hera Carrier was 5 when she was diagnosed. So her anxiety symptoms were approaching at risk. So I call it as it is. I'm not saying it's at risk, it's your normal range. If you're a little bit elevated, you're at risk. And if you're even more elevated, you're clinically significant. So what I'm saying is her anxiety is elevated, but it's approaching, it's not at the at-risk range, and I'll come back to that. Somatization was within the at-risk range, and that's bodily complaint. So I'm trying to look at everybody. Somatization is bodily complaints of pain, headache, stomach ache, saying they're sick but they're really not. And so again, as a neuropsychologist who's been doing this for 25 years, those two tend to go together. Many people feel anxiety in their body. You get a stomach ache, a headache, when you're anxious. And just to be clear, anxiety symptoms approaching at risk, when you then look at what they endorsed, which was almost always, often, sometimes never, I put it in my notes, but I remember clearly that almost always, that Hera is anxious and then often nervous, worried about what her parents think, nervous about what her teachers think, nervous about what her friends think, says I'm not good at this, afraid to make a mistake. So there was lots of concern, even though it didn't hit the at-risk range. If you then go into an item analysis, there's a lot going on there, and makes me, just like I'm concerned about Severin, potentially, not absolutely, but more likely than not, going to have ADHD symptoms and need occupational therapy and physical therapy. Hera, I look at her symptoms and I'm thinking that it's more likely than not that she's going to continue to experience anxiety and somatic concerns. And so we want to be mindful of providing some psychological support, maybe medication support. Again, we're not jumping to conclusions. We're just saying these are checking off warning signs that we want to be mindful of and really provide the best care we can moving forward.
Tell us about Christopher Brian Wren, please.
Sure. Christopher is diagnosed at 2 with acute liver failure and autism spectrum disorder. And Dad endorsed quite a few things, which is appropriate, and a lot of them will be driven by his autism diagnosis for sure. So hyperactivity was approaching at risk. His being withdrawn was at risk. His attention problems was approaching at risk. And then, we didn't want to overwhelm you with bullet points, but a lot of other areas were significant or at risk, including atypicality, which is just seeming out of touch, saying things, babbling, not making sense, social skills, ADL skills, needing to be reminded to brush your teeth or to eat, leadership opportunities, all those were elevated, and it's consistent with someone who has autism as well. And for him, I would say that, yes, there's no denying that he has autism, and that comes with its own set of challenges. But on top of that, you're adding another component of acute liver failure with all the cognitive potential, cognitive and behavioral issues downstream. So he's has both. It's not one or the other, it would be both.
Next slide, please. Can you take us through London and Lyric, please?
Of course. So London and Lyric were 7 months old at diagnosis, which is remarkably young in terms of developing brains. The others were young too, but this is incredibly young. And we all witnessed and saw how, what they went through in the hospital in terms of being, that was Lyric, being unconscious, and having a tube, and then I can only imagine what mom would go through, having to learn how to put a feeding tube in. That's not something, I've seen. That's not something I would welcome to do myself. I'm really impressed with her fortitude. So London was evaluated by mom's report as withdrawal being within the at-risk range, so being withdrawn, shying away from adults, preferring to play alone, kind of more isolated, and also that she had gone under and received cognitive behavioral therapy and physical therapy. Kudos to mom for being proactive, and that's the type of thing that she may or may not need moving forward, to continuing. It's not as if, okay, you had seen cognitive behavioral therapy and physical therapy and you're done, you're cured. It doesn't usually work that way, particularly because she's in preschool. And so the task demands are going to increase over time. Lyric similarly also got cognitive behavioral therapy and physical therapy, and more likely than not will need more of that as she gets older and the tasks in elementary school, middle school, high school become more complex. And then mom noted qualitatively that she has some expressive language delay, so that's of concern, right? So taking speech and language therapy potentially down the line. And then depression, which I kind of think of as moodiness or depression, but it just, being a strong mood. variable is approaching at risk.
Doctor, generally speaking, are these 5 children doing fine?
No, I don't think so at all. I think that, and why I believe this is you get some profiles where parents are saying, oh, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, and you're not getting that. They're saying, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine, and this one area or 2 areas are a problem. So that's a realistic response rate. That's not trying to to exaggerate. But I just explained to you, hopefully clearly, what they're struggling with per parent report that came out as valid compared to others, their age and their gender, because boys and girls obviously are different. And that I'm not jumping to conclusions, but you heard me say for every single child, what things they may have trouble with as they're so young. 3 of them aren't in school yet. 1 is not, actually 4 of them are not in school. One is not in school, 3 are in pre-K, to be specific, excuse me, and 1's in 2nd grade. They have so much ahead of them in terms of responsibilities for school, social, extracurricular, social. I am putting red warning flags in those areas that need to be followed up so that we can be responsible and provide optimal care for what they went through by drinking to no fault of their own, hydrazine that has, the real water that has hydrazine in it that's neurotoxic.
That's a great segue. Let's talk about your literature review, Doctor. This is the research that you did, is that right?
Yes.
All right, so you just mentioned hydrazine. Did you do research on hydrazine?
Yes.
And you just referred to it as a neurotoxin.
Yes.
Could you explain the significance of hydrazine being a neurotoxin for the jury?
Sure. So it could be organic or synthetic. I don't know if you've had kids who've had lead poisoning, but that's. And then hydrazine is also a neurotoxin. And it can impact multiple organ systems, like I was saying before, your lung functioning, your dermatology, your skin, obviously, your liver, your neurological functioning, including your brain. So it's multi-system, and that's why you saw these kids have all those, not only their liver enzymes, but you saw them have all those physical problems because it's impacting their brain. And it's not like, okay, they're cured, they're done. No, we don't know what the damage has been to their brain. And as a matter of fact, for hydrazine, as I said, there's not a lot of literature on adults, but in mice and rats, when they drink hydrazine or get injected with hydrazine, there's quite a lot of physical problems, developmental problems, and even incidents of tumors and cancer, again, in a mice and rat model in the lab.
Did you also review studies, articles that dealt with children who suffer liver failure?
Yes.
I'd like to take you, just have you show a couple of these articles. Shane, could we bring up Exhibit 431? please?
Objection, has this been admitted yet? We did not distribute
Come
it.
on,
I can let you run